Fred Whitfield first set foot in Carter Gym in the late 1960s as an 8-year-old attending the Campbell Basketball School. Little did he know then that Campbell University would be a launching point for an incredible career in athletics. A decade of summer camps in Buies Creek helped develop the skills that would enable him to play Division I basketball. The educational foundation set for him by his parents propelled him not only to an undergraduate degree, but an MBA and law school. His accomplishments and awards are numerous: induction into the Campbell Athletics and the North Carolina Sports Hall of Fame, recipient of the Order of the Longleaf Pine, and the Thurgood Marshall Award of Excellence. The playing floor at his high school bears his name. These honors and many others have followed a career that began in coaching at his alma mater, opening a law practice, joining one of the most prestigious sports agent firms in the world, working at Nike, where he helped launch the Jordan brand, and serving as an executive for 2 NBA franchises. Along the way, Fred Whitfield always built relationships first. Whether it was starting a basketball camp for underserved youth in his hometown of Greensboro, negotiating deals worth hundreds of millions of dollars, or working with leaders from both sides of the aisle through politically sensitive subjects, Fred's humility, sense of service, and his ability to ask the right question have served him and those he encounters well. My name is Stan Cole, class of 1987, and this is our next installment of Tales from the Creek, where we visit with the people who've made this place special over the years. I'm delighted to be joined today by Campbell Hall of Fame and Board of Trustees member and former Charlotte Hornets president Fred Whitfield. Welcome to Tales from the Creek, Fred, and thanks for taking the time to visit with us.
Thanks, Stan. It's great to be here.
Fred, let's just start at the beginning. Tell us about growing up in Greensboro and your family.
Yeah, I was one of those lucky young people that had 2 parents at home. Both of my parents were well educated. They both had master's degrees. And I was taught from a very young age that education could be a difference maker in my life. I always loved sports. And so I started at a very young age playing Little League Baseball and playing basketball at the community center in my neighborhood. And I just loved sports. But my parents would always emphasize and re-emphasize to me that sports could only get me so far unless I became a professional athlete, and the chances of that were slim. But if I got a great education, my path I could do almost anything I wanted to do. And so I'm so grateful to my parents for really making education first. I was fortunate to go to Southeast Guilford High School, build some great relationships there, learn a lot about leadership. I was voted president of my senior class there. I was vice president of the student body in high school. And I really learned how to talk to people and really have people, I don't want to say follow me, but have people believe in the things that I believed in, and it chose me to be a leader. And I think, those early learnings in high school afforded me the opportunity to be able to navigate my way through my professional career, be able to build great relationships in both the Greensboro community, the Washington, D.C. community when I worked for the Wizards, and then ultimately back in the Charlotte community when I came back to run the then Charlotte Bobcats, which we changed the name in 2014 back to the Charlotte Hornets.
So, tell me, you mentioned playing Little League and playing at the community center, whether we were in the driveway or whether we were in the backyard. Who were your heroes? Were there any players that you looked up to or emulated?
Yeah, I really, really looked up to David Thompson. He was such a tremendous player at NC State. He happened to be from Cleveland County, North Carolina, which is where my mom is from. But I also had the opportunity, as you mentioned before, to come to Campbell University's basketball school. It was Campbell College back then, their basketball school, and be able to see the likes of, you name it, Gene Banks and Ralph Sampson, Johnny Dawkins. I saw a lot of great players that came through. And Campbell at the time actually had some really good players, Sam Staggers, Don Whaley and others, Randy Yates. We had a great group that I could look up to that were counselors at our camp when I was a camper. And, I really think that I was one of those very fortunate young people that my parents really put a lot of energy behind me. would drive me down to Campbell's camp every summer for 10 straight years. Would make sure that I could get back and forth to practice at Windsor Community Center. And, again, reemphasize how important education was, which is really, I think, the foundation of everything good that's happened to me in my career.
You have a unique perspective in the fact that you were a camper for 10 years. Then you worked the camp as a counselor, as a player at Campbell, and then you were on staff as one of the coaches for the camp. What are a couple of the things that really stand out about that the Campbell Basketball School in your memory?
I loved going every summer to basketball school at Campbell because I would build new friendships. I get to meet people from really all over the country. Kids were flying in and being picked up at the Raleigh-Durham Airport and bussed over to camp. Kids were coming from all over North and South Carolina, and I was building new friendships. But, when I think about the days that Pistol Pete Maravich would come in and do an exhibition for all of us, or Skeeter Swift, I know I'm dating myself now, calling these names.
Pittsburgh Condors.
Pittsburgh Condors, watching those guys do their thing and to be able to meet John Wooden, legendary Coach John Wooden, and Coach Fred McCall. It was just so much history that was a part of that camp. And I really enjoyed, just being there those 10 years as a camper, having the opportunity to work with Coach Roberts and be a counselor when I played there. And then I was very fortunate that Coach Roberts allowed me to come back and serve as his graduate assistant. And I was able to be on the staff as an assistant coach at Campbell and work camp. But I think that camp is probably the best camp that's ever been put together and run across the nation. It was just so unique because to think of a small town like Buies Creek attracting the level of superstar athletes and superstar coaches to come in and work with young people ages 8 to 18 was really almost unheard of. Most colleges had camps, but they didn't attract the talent, both on the coaching side and the player side as counselors, and honestly, the talent that came in and participating in camp every year was at a very high level.
Absolutely. After graduating from Southeast Guilford, where you had a standout career, you chose to stay home and attend UNCG. Tell us a little bit about that decision, and then what ultimately led you to Buies Creek.
Yeah, it was interesting. UNCG was, a local college. They were a Division III school, and they had a very young coach, 26-year-old coach, Jack Mail. And he recruited me under the auspices that UNCG was going to be going Division I my sophomore year. And so I felt that like I wanted to really be part of the core of the first Division I team at UNC Greensboro. So I stayed at home, and I was very fortunate my freshman year to average about 21. I think I averaged 21 points a game. I was honorable mention, Division III All-American as a freshman, and I really wanted to play against better talent. And at the end of my freshman year, the trustees at UNCG decided to stay Division III and stay in the Dixie Conference. And I just wanted to play against better competition, and that just happened to coincide with Campbell coming off of being runners-up in the NAIA National Championship and them having made the decision to go Division I. And I reached out to Coach Roberts and said, hey, I really would like to transfer, and I didn't talk to any other schools. I loved Campbell so much from going to camp there every year, and I loved Coach Roberts and just the thought of, being able to, join a team that had come off such a successful run in the NAIA. To be a part of the foundation of Division I at Campbell was a unique opportunity, somewhat similar to what I thought I was going to experience at UNC Greensboro. And Coach Roberts gave me a full scholarship and asked me if I would join the team. And I didn't know whether I'd get a lot of playing time my sophomore year or not, but I was lucky enough to go right in and start and be able to be a part of the core of that first team that traveled all over the country. We were Division I independent and had to really travel everywhere to make enough games up to be a Division I team. And we were on flights and buses and going all over the country. And it was a great experience for me, and I also had some great teammates.
Well, let me ask you about those while we're there. Tony Brito, the 7-footer from Providence, Rhode Island.
Yep.
Providence was one of the places that y'all went to play
Yep.
at.
We did.
Georgia Tech a couple times at
Yep.
NC State, Virginia Tech.
Yep.
What are some of the best memories you have of on the floor and off the floor at Campbell?
I remember us taking a long bus trip to Florida to play against Stetson. That was a great trip. We got to go to Disney World and hang out while we were on that trip. It was, a lot of camaraderie on that long bus ride down I-95. But as you mentioned, going into Reynolds Coliseum and playing against NC State, and as I think back on those days with Derek Wittenberg and Sidney Lowe being freshmen, when I was a senior at Campbell, being able to play against those guys and build what's been a lifelong friendship with those guys. I look back on games like that. I look back at Georgia Tech, and then I think about schools like Samford. I had a pretty good game down at Samford, so obviously I enjoyed that. And even Baptist College down in, I guess, maybe Charleston. We used to go down and play Baptist, and I can think about the rivalry we had with Pfeiffer. We still, we go down and play them once a year. But once we went Division I, we were playing Division I teams. And as you mentioned, going up to Providence, Rhode Island and playing Providence College, it was just a phenomenal experience for an 18, 19-year-old youngster to be able to travel and play the game that he loved.
For someone who grew up going to a summer camp where many of the ACC players were coming in there and coaches were involved, and then to be able to actually go set foot at Reynolds Coliseum and play in between the lines there. What was that? Did that experience stand out to you?
It did, Stan, because, I knew that, playing center in high school like I did at 6'2", that my chances of being recruited to a Division I team to play guard when I never had played guard was pretty slim. And so I got a chance at UNC Greensboro to move over and play the shooting guard position, learn to handle the ball a lot more. And so when I got to Campbell, I was used to playing in the backcourt. And so it was great for me to be able to go in and see if I could compete against some of these guys in the ACC that I don't want to say I looked up to them, but they were contemporaries of mine, but they obviously had been recruited to much higher profile schools than I was recruited to. And so I enjoyed that. I enjoyed the challenge. I enjoyed us going in and playing these teams tough. Tony Brito, you mentioned, was a 7-footer, probably one of the best passing big men that I can remember being around, and definitely the best passing big man I ever played with. He was responsible for a lot of the points I scored, just cutting down the middle and him throwing me a behind the back pass or over the head pass. I think about Ron Curtis and just what a tough player he was coming out of the Washington, D.C. area. I think about the Newton brothers. They were just, Rhett and Jeff were great teammates. I mean, I had phenomenal teammates that I'm still friends with. Ernie Gilchrist, I could go down the list. Rodney McCants, Daryl Malden, Harvey Dahl. I mean, all these guys are friends of mine to this day. And I just appreciate the opportunity that Campbell gave me, not only to get a great education, I majored in economics, and I can think of those days with Dr. Wu and Mr. Falwell and going through, I can't remember my accounting teacher's name, but she was phenomenal. But just the solid educational foundation I was able to get in undergrad, and then to be able to go back and get my MBA while I coached and sat next to Press Maravich for a year as the other assistant coach. I mean, I just couldn't have drawn it up any better for me. It's almost like a dream life that I never imagined I'd be able to go through, that just happened to just, God-given. It just kind of rolled out for me and great things happened to me.
Fred, we lost Coach Roberts a couple years ago. Tell us a little bit about him and some things that you might have learned from him.
Well, Coach Roberts was really like a second dad to me, because I would, spend a week or two every summer with him from the time I was 8 years old to 18, and I built a relationship with him. And when I went back to play, he and I became even closer, and I became really close with Ms. Roberts and their kids, and I was really a part of their family. And I can just remember him giving me that opportunity. I'll never forget or never be able to repay him for giving me that opportunity to come to Campbell, to have a full scholarship, and my parents not have to worry about paying my tuition to go to college, and then giving me that opportunity to sit on the bench and become an assistant coach with him and earn my MBA. It's interesting. I probably would have never gone to law school, but for Press Mavericks, telling me that I was too smart to be a coach. Now, when I see how well these coaches are doing in their careers, I'm not so sure I was that smart. But he encouraged me to go to law school and pursue a law degree. And I'm grateful that I had that opportunity to sit there and really be mentored and tutored by by a legend like Coach Maravich.
And he was one of the greatest X and O guys ever with the with
Yeah, he was a little too good. Our players couldn't quite understand the plays he was drawing up in the circle because he draws X's and O's, and we'd all get confused, and we'd just go out there and run another play. But he was just a phenomenal basketball mind. He loved the game. His daughter was actually in school at Campbell. Granddaughter, I'm sorry, was at Campbell, which is why he came up, and he and Coach Roberts were close friends, and he had worked camp, I bet 20 years in a row. And so he was just like the perfect sort of senior citizen to sit on the bench and just share a wealth of knowledge with all of us.
I was fortunate, my sophomore year, I kept the scorebook with the team on the road, and this would have been the 84, 85 season, and that was Press's last year,
Okay.
on the staff.
Okay.
And I can just remember sitting in a Shoney's restaurant with him and Jerry Smith, the head coach at the time, and then him, and I was just overwhelmed. I would have been 21 years old, and to hear what he said, and then knowing, his influence over Pete and Pete's career and everything, it was just unbelievable. And I'm sitting there thinking, and all this is happening at Campbell. It just kind of was mind blowing for me.
It was for me too, Stan. And, to be able to sit in coaches' meetings with him and prep sessions and just listen to how much basketball knowledge he had was really sort of it kind of in awe of just how much he, probably had forgotten more than all of us had learned at that point. And so again, none of that would have happened for me without Campbell.
Fred, your time as an assistant coach with the Camels, two of your recruits, Juan Austin and Clarence Greer, not only made a great impact on the playing floor, but they've also gone on to great careers in the business and civic world. Share with us a little bit about those two men.
Two great men, and I was just so fortunate to be able to go back home and recruit them. Clarence was a player at Dudley High School, and I think Juan was at Grimsley High School, if I'm not mistaken. He played at Grimsley, but they were two standout Guilford County stars. And I spent a lot of time going back home on the weekends, going to their high school games and really recruiting them. One of the things that I told them was that if they came to Campbell, they'd get a great opportunity at a great education. And I'm so thankful that they trusted me enough to come down, and they became business majors, sort of followed the same path that I took, majoring in business administration or economics, and then being able to take that and really build their own successful careers in business, and as you mentioned, have become sort of civic superstars back in our hometown. And so I have so much respect for Juan and for Clarence, and I'm just glad they said yes when I went to recruit them, because they could have gone in a number of directions, but they decided to follow me down to Campbell.
Well, and all the Campbell fans are glad too. Juan had a kind of an interesting career like you in those pre-Big South Conference days where he had to play against that schedule where you're all over the country and
Yeah.
and four different coaches. And then Clarence, of course, was the Big South Player of the Year in '87 and
Yeah.
was drafted by the Rockets. I don't think he could have scripted it any better either. Our guest on Tales from the Creek today is Fred Whitfield, class of 1980 and Campbell Hall of Fame member. Fred, during your undergraduate career, you met a camper at the Campbell Basketball School who would go on to become arguably the greatest player in the sport's history. Share with us a little bit about how you met Michael Jordan and the early days of your friendship.
Yeah, Stan, it's just very interesting. I met Michael in Buies Creek, and I think he was going into his senior year of high school. Was a standout player, great player, and we just sort of hit it off. He happened to be in my group, and I was his counselor. And then, when he finished and went on to North Carolina, I was back in graduate school, and I was a graduate assistant coach. And when we didn't have games, Michael would say, "Hey, why don't you ride on up to Chapel Hill and I'll put your name on the list. And then at the back of, I guess it was Carmichael Auditorium, Charles Waddell, former basketball and football player at Carolina, would man the table in the back, by the back door, and it'd be just a sheet of paper with handwritten names on it, and my name was on it. I go sit in the bleachers in the end zone, and once the game was over, Michael and I would go out to dinner, and it was just, we go to Rascal, was our favorite in Chapel Hill, and get that hamburger steak, and then just kind of hang out. And then in the summers, I would go up and play pickup ball in Woolen Gym. All the guys that were in the NBA would come back and play, and all the current Carolina players would be there. And I just hang out with Michael and go play pickup ball. And then he came back and actually worked our camp as a counselor, and came, and played in those pickup games in Carter Gymnasium that were just phenomenal for the Buies Creek community to come out and watch, 8 or 10 ACC players playing a high level of pickup, right in front of them where they can almost touch these guys. But Michael and I just became closer and closer friends, and it really evolved into a lifelong friendship, which we still enjoy at this point. And, I'd say I've been very fortunate that I was given the opportunity to build my career and work alongside him in a number of roles, and be able to, help grow his business at Jordan Brand, help him manage the Washington Wizards, help him manage and become an investor with him in the Charlotte Hornets, and now be his partner in 2311 Racing. So we've had some great times together. Of course, he got fired in Washington, and so did I. But it was really sort of a blessing in disguise, because I got to go back to Nike at that point and really be a part of the creation of Jordan Brand, which at the time was a small $300 million a year company that now this year they'll do $8 billion, really using the same strategy we put together in 2003, and just have grown and grown and grown it. And to watch it evolve to what it has become, and to know that I was part of the really sort of the infancy of the brand is something that I'm proud of. But more importantly, to be able to help him build, the career that he had, and be able to help him build the business stature that he enjoys at this point, and the ability for him to be able to buy majority interest in the Charlotte Bobcats, and then allow me to continue my role as president and vice chairman, is something that I'm grateful for from him.
Fred, it wasn't long after you left coaching at Campbell that you founded the Achievements Unlimited Basketball School in Greensboro. Tell us about that program and how it has grown over the last 4 decades.
Well, Stan, is probably my favorite week of the year every year. It's hard to believe this summer will be my 40th anniversary of Achievements Unlimited. We've had over 15,000 kids come through our program. My first year was 1985, and it was Michael's rookie year, and he and Ralph Sampson, who I met in Buies Creek as well, Johnny Dawkins and David Henderson, were the first 4 sort of high-profile athletes that came and helped me kick off my initial camp in Greensboro, North Carolina A&T. And I think we did probably 15 of my camps in Greensboro, and I enjoyed, those times that all these star athletes would come in town and support me, and talk about their lives, both on and off the court, talk about how important education was, how important it was to stay drug-free. And we just build it and build it and build it. And we went from the first year, 90 kids, to 180 our second year. Then we went to 350. And for years, we were 350, 400 kids. We created what, we called the greatest pickup game in the world as a part of our camp. And, it was, nothing, for me to have 18 to 20 NBA guys come in and play pickup in front of our campers and their parents only. We closed it to the public. Initially in Western Guilford's high school gym, we sort of outgrew that and had to go over to UNCG and use their gym. But it was something that we did about 20, 25 years in a row. And Michael would, 1 week be in the NBA Finals. Two weeks later, he'd be at Western Guilford High School playing in a pickup game. And I'd always find a way to put the Duke guys on one team and the Carolina guys on the other.
He's a smart man.
And let that rivalry just continue to brew. and brew and brew. And when I think about the 50 or 60 or 80 NBA players that have come through our camp over the years and continue to come through, it's really been amazing to watch some of these young people that weren't good enough to be NBA players. I think the only one, Brendan Haywood, was the only one that actually made it to the NBA. Everybody else has come out. Many of them have done unbelievable things as military officers, doctors, lawyers, teachers, you know, really embracing, what we taught at our basketball school, how important education was. And that all stemmed back from me hearing that from my parents. And so as we embark on the 40th anniversary this summer, we've hosted the last, I think, 12 years in Charlotte. We'll be at Charlotte Country Day again, July 21st through the 24th. We'll have another 250 to 275 underserved kids. We've taken our program and really had it evolve in with my charity, Hoop Tea Charities, into a scholarship program there where we take underserved kids that are very talented academically, nothing to do with sports, and we pay their full tuition to go to private schools in the Charlotte area. So we've got 8 kids at Providence Day School. We've got 4 kids at Charlotte Country Day School. We've got 6 kids at John Crosland School that we're paying their full tuition all the way from 9th grade through 12th grade. And so we'll have our first graduating class this spring. And a number of these kids are being recruited by Ivy League schools, which is amazing. I'm a product of public schools, and I certainly, appreciate what public schools do for young people. My mom was a first grade teacher in the Guilford County public school system, so I love public schools. But some of these kids are just so talented that if given the opportunity to maybe get another little edge, that might take them to be able to pick any college in the world they want to go to. And that's sort of been our goal as we've continued our basketball school and then had our Hoop Tea charity sort of evolve into a scholarship program for underserved kids.
I understand that your parents were quite community service involved. How did that influence you, do you think?
Well, it's what I saw at home. I saw my mom and dad volunteering at the YMCA at Hayes Taylor YMCA, where I grew up. I saw my dad really leading the fundraising efforts every year at Hayes Taylor Y. I saw them very involved in my home church, Providence Baptist Church, and teaching Sunday school and doing everything they could to really put their arms around young people. Providence was very famous or well known in Greensboro for helping all of its young people have study preparation for the SAT. The goal was to have, somebody score a perfect 1600. And we had a couple come out of my church to score 1600. But we had a couple of professors at North Carolina A&T that taught the SAT prep course to all of us. And I think, of course, that gave us an edge right within our home church. But my parents, my mom was a school teacher. My dad worked in the postal system. They both retired after 30 plus years of service. But they always found a way to stay engaged in the community. And again, it's what I saw at home. And that certainly had a huge impact on my life.
Following your graduation from the NC Central School of Law, you began practicing and then moved into the business of representing athletes. Share with us a little bit about your time with Falk Associates Management Enterprises.
Yeah, it was great being able to join David Falk's firm, Fame. I joined the firm right after he left ProServe and formed his own firm with Curtis Polk, who is my partner in 2311 with Michael and was vice chairman of the Hornets and ultimately managing partner when I got promoted. So I've had a lifelong friendship with both David and Curtis. But it's ironic how I ended up working with them. When I finished law school, many of the large sports management firms had done their due diligence and knew that Michael and I were very close friends. And so they started IMG, Advantage International, Lynn Elmore, who are all very reputable sports agencies, started recruiting me. And here I was thinking I was this young hotshot lawyer with the NBA, that they were recruiting me because I was going to bring all this knowledge to the firm. Last question was always, hey, so if we decide to move forward, you think you can help us, bring Michael Jordan over? And, I sort of laughed every time they said that. And after having conversations with Michael, he and I discussed it and said, that's going to be a huge conflict because at the time I didn't do any work for him. David and Curtis were doing all his work. I was just his friend.
Right.
And so David Falk then started recruiting me and wanted me to come in and join the firm. I learned so much from David about negotiating. I still believe to this day that he's the best negotiator I've ever been around. I believe to this day Curtis Polk is one of the smartest financial people that I've been around. So to be able to work with them and be a part of their firm, to be able to sign Juwan Howard and Sharon Wright, who went 5 and 6 in their draft, bring them to our firm to sign 8 NFL players, several from Virginia, several from Chapel Hill, a couple from Clemson, represent them, and really help shape not only on the field, but off the field, the lives of some great young men that are doing phenomenal things now, even in their post careers, is something that I'm grateful for. So I enjoyed my time with Falk Associates Management Enterprises.
How did that move on into you joining Nike basketball? What was the attraction there for you?
Yeah, it was interesting because of my relationship with Michael. He'd asked me to go with him to Portland when he'd have his business meetings at Nike, even prior to me being employed by Falk Associates. And I would just really go out as his friend. And I was fortunate enough to sit in, his meetings, design meetings, when he'd sit with the shoe designers or the apparel designers and create the Jordan 1, 2, 3, in collaboration with them. So I got to know all the people at Nike. And when David and Curtis were about to sell their firm, Fame, to SFX, I didn't know what was going to happen to me. And I was, again, very fortunate that Nike called me and said, hey, are you going to stay with SFX? If not, we'd like to create a really unique role. Why don't you come out to Portland and let's talk about it? So I went out and I talked with senior management there. And it was really a unique interview because they allowed me to talk to them about how I saw myself adding value to Nike rather than interviewing for a particular role. So they really kind of tailored a role to my talents and allowed me to oversee all of our college scouting and then, make a presentation to Phil Knight and senior management on who we should sign in each upcoming draft. And it'd be 4 or 5, high profile players. And once I made my presentation, they said, okay, Fred, go get them signed. And then they give me a budget and I go out and negotiate against their agents. So I went to the other side of the table representing Nike. And then once I negotiated all those deals prior to the season, then I was based in North Carolina, working out of my law office actually. And then I managed all of our NBA players in the Eastern Conference. And so I was able to help utilize our high profile athletes, Michael, Penny Hardaway, Scottie Pippen, how we'd integrate them into our marketing platforms. And I'd actually go on the commercial shoots and make sure the players were getting what they need and make sure that the producers and directors were getting what they need to have a successful commercial shoot. And it was just a lot of fun. And then I really literally would look at the NBA schedule and take out a highlighter and decide which NBA games I wanted to go to because I averaged about 7 to 8 players on every team in the Eastern Conference. I managed all of our about 150 Nike athletes. And so I literally just went game to game to game every night and watched pro games for a living.
In 2000, you had the opportunity to join the Washington Wizards as Director of Player Personnel and Assistant Legal Counsel. What were some of your responsibilities and what did you really enjoy about your time in Washington?
Again, Stan, a sort of unique situation because Michael knew me very well, and he had just been hired as president of basketball operations, and he was a minority owner in the Wizards at that time. He brought me in, and as a part of my role, I was assistant legal counsel too, so I was an in-house attorney on the basketball side, responsible for negotiating our player contracts, responsible for managing the salary cap, overseeing all of our college scouting. So the scouts reported to me. And I think back on, the young scouts I had working for me. One is now the president of basketball operations of the Minnesota Timberwolves, Tim Conley, who's just phenomenal, talent in his own right. Wes Unseld Jr. was my other scout. And I've watched them just have tremendous careers. But I had a great time because I was able to manage the cap. I'm a numbers guy, and we made some pretty big trades and unloaded a lot of our salaries. We traded Juwan Howard, who I had represented prior to, so he and I both were crying when I had to go tell him we had just traded him to the Houston Rockets or Dallas Mavericks, I think, Dallas. But managed the cap, oversaw scouting, and negotiate all the player contracts. And it was just a lot of fun to be able to do that with Michael and Rod Higgins and Wes Unseld Sr. And then my second year, Michael went back as a player. Mr. Poland, the former owner, begged Michael to go back and help him revitalize the organization, the franchise, and give it a boost. And Michael did that. We sold out every game home and away for 2 years. Ticket prices double, suite prices double, sponsorships double. And Mr. Poland and the ownership group really enjoyed a nice financial boost. And then I think most people know how that ended after Michael played the second year. Mr. Poland decided to go in a different direction. But the thing I remember the most about Michael deciding to come back to play was he announced that he was coming back to play right after 9/11. And he agreed to give his whole salary to the 9/11 victims. So he played for free and gave the money away to those that had, families that had suffered because of the damage of 9/11.
After you moved back to Nike as Director of Business and Legal Affairs with Jordan Brand, you returned to the NBA in 2006 with the Charlotte Bobcats, now the Hornets, served as president, COO, and alternate governor. What are some of your proudest moments during your time, your 17 years with the North Carolina's professional franchise?
Stan, probably the thing I'm most proud of is most of my senior leadership team that was there with me in 2006 was there with me when I retired in 2023. When I think about my chief revenue officer, Jacob Gallagher, he and I started the same day. He was an intern, I was the president, and he worked his way all the way up to chief revenue officer. When I think about Pete Gwelly, who's now the CEO of the Buffalo Bills, I recruited him from the Bills, where he was the chief revenue officer, and he was my number 2 guy for 10 years before he went back to the Giants and then back home to Buffalo. I think about Seth Bennett, who was my first hire, chief marketing officer. He's still chief marketing officer to this day, so he's been there 19 years. Tony Datcher, who I recruited as our head of security, is still head of security for the Hornets today. And so even though, we had some big wins on the business side, and I was not responsible for basketball at all. I oversaw the bottom line, profit loss, all of our community engagement. We did some big deals. We did a naming rights deal for our arena with Time Warner Cable, and was transformed into Spectrum, which is now why it's called the Spectrum Center. We did a new regional television deal that took us from 800,000 households to over 4 million households with Fox Sports Net. I could just go down the line on deals that we did. We did a huge deal with Novant Health, who was our premier healthcare partner. We did a Jersey Patch deal with Linden Tree, which was a huge 7-figure 5-year deal. We did a lot of deals, but the thing that I think back on and I'm so appreciative of is just the way Commissioner David Stern and Commissioner Adam Silver and Deputy Commissioner Mark Tatum embraced me from the day I got my job in 2006. I sat on the Board of Governors with Bob Johnson and Michael Jordan the whole time Bob on the team, and then I stayed and kept my seat as an alternate governor with Curtis Polk and Michael Jordan until I retired. And every subcommittee at the NBA that had a team president as a part of it, and some of these committees had 4 people on. There were 2 team presidents, 2 GMs. Some would have 4 team presidents, some would have 8. I was fortunate enough to have a seat on literally every subcommittee that a team president sat on. So as I think back and reflect on my career, I was just so fortunate that Commissioner Stern and Adam Silver and Mark Tatum embraced me and gave me really unique opportunities.
Among the other accomplishments that you helped the Hornets achieve was the rebranding with the Hornets nickname and marks, helping to bring the NBA All-Star Game to the Queen City. I know that you've had the opportunity to work with leaders from all sides of the political spectrum in your role as a professional executive. But during your time with the Hornets, the Spectrum Center not only hosted the 2012 Democratic National Convention, but then you were also the point person for the arena hosting the 2020 Republican National Convention.
Absolutely.
Okay, so given the political quote-unquote atmosphere these days, I almost shake my head and wonder how that happened. And I want to know, I've got to ask you, what's the secret to finding common ground with people on extreme opposite sides of an issue?
It's really all about building relationships with people. And I was fortunate enough when I was chosen to be one of 5 executives to go down and try to repeal the bathroom bill. You probably heard about House Bill 2,
Yes.
which caused us to lose the 2017 All-Star game. Because I was one of those 5 executives from Charlotte that went down and negotiated with Senator Berger and Speaker Moore and Dan Blue and Robert Reeves, the House minority leaders, I was able to build a great relationship with both of them. And then I was able to literally walk down the Democratic Hall and meet senators or House of Representatives and start to build rapport and relationships to try and, get Charlotte and the state's economy out of the tank with House Bill 2. And because of that, I was able to continue those relationships and be able to do the same thing when we were trying to recruit the Democratic National Convention. I worked closely with our mayor, with our city council. A convention brings $100+ million economic impact to any community that it comes to. So we as a business community, we're all working together to recruit the 2012 DNC. Well, we looked at the RNC the same way. It was going to be $100+ million economic impact. We have a great mayor in Vi Lyles who is a Democrat, but embraced, very much, and our city council embraced very much us hosting the 2020 Republican National Convention, which we would have hosted but for the pandemic. We were all excited because we knew that our city was going to be full of delegates. All of our hotels were going to be full. Our restaurants were going to be full. There was going to be a lot of vibrancy. We were going to drive some of our biggest per caps in food and beverage at the Spectrum Center during that convention as we did during the Democratic National Convention. So it really was all about business. And I think Senator Berger and Speaker Moore really respected our community, our mayor. I think, because of our relationship, they respected the role I played as president of the organization and wanting to host. And I think President Trump was, looking forward to coming to the Spectrum Center to host the 2020 convention. And, of course, President Obama enjoyed, his second term being boosted from the convention we hosted in 2012. But, I've been very fortunate that I've been able to build relationships on both sides. I'm actually a consultant now, working with Checkmate Government Relations, which is a lobbying firm, high-powered lobbying firm that's based in D.C., Raleigh, and Winston-Salem. We have offices. And I'm a strategic advisor for them, really helping them grow their business, introducing them to CEOs that we can help their companies, with certain things that are happening within the federal government. And I enjoy that. I enjoy being able to talk to representatives on both sides of the aisle and building relationships that way.
Fred, of all your honors and awards, whether it's the North Carolina Sports Hall of Fame, the Order of the Longleaf Pine, and so many others, are there any that really stand out to you?
Yeah, probably 2 stand out the most. Being inducted into the Campbell Sports Hall of Fame in 1995 was a great day in my life because I was able to have both my parents there, my aunt and my uncle who helped raise me along with my parents. That was a huge honor for me because I had never been inducted into a Hall of Fame before. And then, shortly thereafter, got inducted into the Guilford County Sports Hall of Fame. But that was one. But then my high school naming my gym that I played in and putting my name on the court was a huge honor because I certainly didn't expect that from Southeast Guilford High School. But those are the 2 that stand out a lot. Obviously, being fortunate enough to win the North Carolina Award and the Order of the Longleaf Pine.
Right.
And the Dogwood Award, which is the 3 highest awards you can win in our state. To be able to win those, and then the highest business honor that the Charlotte Chamber gives the citizen of the Carolinas, to be able to win that award too. It really is all surreal to me because I never thought about winning awards. I was just trying to do my job, build relationships, help people in the community, help give back, all those type things. And When people have honored me, I often have thought I was getting too much credit for a lot of the things I was being recognized for. People were giving me like most of the credit for helping get House Bill 2 repealed. I was part of the team, but Andrea Smith and Charles, um, I can't remember his last name, but Charles Bowman, we had a group of 5 of us that spent a year in Raleigh working on getting that bathroom bill repealed. I got a lot of the credit because the first big event that came back was me recruiting the NBA All-Star game back in 2019, which really got our North Carolina economy back on the run. But again, everything that I've earned has been part of a team. None of it's been because of me. We were losing $30 million a year, and this is very public. When I was hired in 2006, Bob Johnson was writing a cash call check every year for $30 million. Well, in 4 years, we were at break even, and by the time Michael bought the team, we were in high double-digit profit. And Michael bought the team, again, very public, for $175 million. And when we sold 2 years ago, we sold for $3 billion, 17-time multiple. So I've been fortunate that I have great teammates to help me, be able to accomplish a lot of these things. I happen to be the president and vice chairman and the one really on the line, had to make the tough decisions. But when you have the kind of talent I was able to recruit and keep on my team, that's the only way any of that stuff happened.
You sit on the board of trustees at your alma mater. You've delivered the graduation address at your alma mater. You look back at what you've accomplished and are still involved in. Fred, do you ever look back and wonder, how did I get here?
I do it all the time, Stan. I have to pinch myself sometimes because it's almost like I'm living a dream life because, I never really chased a job or a career. I was always fortunate that someone knocked on my door and said, would you be interested in coming to Nike? Would you be interested in coming to Falk Associates Management? Would you be interested in coming, to work with the Wizards? Would you be interested in coming to work for the Bobcats? Would you be interested in coming to work for Jordan Brand? To be able to have that type of career and literally have a senior executive role on every side of sports you can have is something that I could have never dreamt of when I was a 9th, 10th, 11th grade student at Southeast Guilford High School.
You left your position with the Hornets in 2023. It doesn't sound like you're retired.
Well, I'm failing at it miserably. I went through, I had cancer. I had throat cancer. I was diagnosed in 2022, and I had a pretty tough battle. I went through 8 weeks of radiation, 5 days a week. 1 day a week, I had 8 hours of chemo. I had to get a feeding tube. I went from 215 down to 165. And my friends tell me I didn't look like myself, and I certainly didn't feel like myself. But I got some of the best medical care you could get at Levine Cancer Center in Charlotte. And I made it through. And praise God, I'm 2 years out now from my last chemo and radiation treatment. All of my quarterly scans have come back clean. I retired, primarily because I wanted to focus more on my health and my mom's health. My mom is 94 now, slowing down just a little bit. But I also wanted to give the new owners who had just paid $3 billion for our franchise the opportunity to run the franchise like they wanted to run, to make the decisions they wanted to make. I was committed to stay as long as Michael on the team. And again, I was grateful to him that he allowed me to be his partner in that venture. But once he sold the team, once the new owners came in, it was time for them to really run their show. And I was glad that the last deal I was able to negotiate with the city of Charlotte for $265 million to renovate the Spectrum Center. And I was able to hand that right off to the new owners, and they've done just a phenomenal job in renovating the Spectrum Center. It looks almost brand new. And I'm very proud every time I go in the building to be able to see what we were able to leave for them.
How do you and Mary like to spend your time these days?
We love to travel, and, we don't have many kids. We have 2 dogs that live like kids. So we spend some time down in Florida. We have a place in West Palm Beach, but we enjoy going to sporting events. We're going over to London and go to a couple English Premier League soccer matches in December. We're going to go over to South Africa and go watch the Live tournament in Johannesburg. and we're gonna go take a safari while we're over there. We enjoy traveling, and I still enjoy doing my nonprofit board work. I still sit on the Charlotte Executive Leadership Council. You mentioned Campbell University Board of Trustees, the Charlotte Regional Business Alliance, and the Foundation for the Carolinas, all nonprofits. And then I sit on one public board, O'Reilly Auto Parts, which I really love that company because the way the O'Reilly family built that company reminds me so much of how Phil Knight built Nike, with the promote from within and a family environment. So I enjoy my time at O'Reilly.
Finally, Fred, can you put into words for us how Campbell University and the Buies Creek community have impacted your life?
Well, as I think back on Campbell and what it's done for me, it gave me every opportunity that I've been able to take advantage of in some shape, form, or fashion, which is why, I felt strongly that my wife and I need to endow a scholarship to thank Coach Roberts and Ms. Roberts for all they did for me, to endow another scholarship in our name to help some underserved kids be able to come and enjoy the Campbell experience like I did. But, I got such a great education at Campbell, and my professors were so good in teaching me not only the book part, but also what I need to learn to be able to matriculate in the business world and be successful.
I'm Stan Cole, and our guest today on Tales from the Creek has been Fred Whitfield. Thank you, Fred, for sharing your Tales from the Creek.
Thanks, Stan. It's been great.